everyone. Oh, frog in my throat. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Silver Sunday. I'm still sharing post here. Silver Sunday this January, March, April, May 28th, 2022, the year of our Lord. How's everyone doing tonight?
Doing well.
Doing very well.
Very good.
And if you've seen our post, you know what I got to hide this screen over here. You know what we're talking about tonight. We are going to talk about some legal stuff with a young lawyer who is joining us today, Joshua Caleb, JC. You say hi, JC.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here.
Hello.
Excuse me. Excellent.
And right off the bat, I want to make this clear, but I am not a lawyer yet. I'll be taking the bar in July. I graduated law school a couple weeks ago with honors, and so right now I'm in the midst of the bar study process.
Excellent. So you're close to being a lawyer.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
We'll talk about some of that too. Before we get started, we want to shout out to our sponsors. A big thank you to Daytona Beach Comic Con in Daytona Beach, Florida. If you like comic books and you like comic book conventions and like to meet independent comic book makers, you should make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con in September. I believe those dates are September 10 and 11. Make your plans now. Silverline will have a big crew there. So gather up your Silverline comics and bring them to us and we will sign them. Better yet, buy new copies while you're there. Get fresh copies and hand the unsigned copies to your friends. Get them to read Silverline comics. Big shout out to Coliseum of Comics in Orlando. If you are in Orlando and you are looking for Silverline comics, you can check Coliseum of Comics on East Colonial, or we discovered a couple of weeks ago in Claremont. So if you are in the Orlando area and you are looking for Silverline comics, be sure to tell them that Silverline sent you. Shout out to Orlando Collector Deviants. If you like fan stuff by fans, you should follow Orlando Collector Deviants. They always do these really cool walkthroughs. They go to these conventions that you can't necessarily go to, and Steve always takes his little camera on a pole up there and he just walks through and shows you all the stuff that you're missing. So, but they bring a lot of that stuff to you. So, and last but not least, big shout out to Kablam, who prints our comics. If you are an independent comic book creator and you need to get your comic printed, you've got it all done, you just need it printed, you need to reach out to Kablam and say, hey, here's my book, and they will take care of you. They take good care of us. So and tonight we are talking about legal stuff. I didn't really, and JC and I didn't really talk about anything specific, so I just said legal stuff. We're going to talk legal stuff tonight, and tonight, thus far, we may have some new ones join us. I am joined by Curtis Fujita. Curtis, say hello to everybody.
Hi.
and we are joined by Roby Conroy. Roberta, say hi to
hello,
folks out there.
everyone. Mm-hmm.
And I am Roland Man, and we are joined by our special guest, JC. Can I say your last name? You don't have it on the screen, so.
Barton.
Okay. So JC, I didn't know if I'm like, okay, are you trying to be incognito here? So JC Barton is going to join us and answer a lot of legal questions. Before we get there, Roberta, did you want to share a screen some?
Sure.
Okay. So JC, the first thing I want to ask, because I'm going to tell a little story about how JC and I met. And then we'll come back and start bombarding him with all kinds of questions. We got a couple of comments here. Bobby Weskovich says, hello, big dummy. Share you on Facebook at home. Thank you, Screw Loose. I appreciate that. JC, for those who don't know, Bobby Weskovich is my father-in-law. Always calls me big dummy. Wubba says, hello, mi amigos. No, he says, hola. Sorry. What's up, Wubba? We need to get you back on here, my friend. Get back on here and join us. So where was I going with that? What was before the comments? Oh, I was telling the story about JC. So last year at MegaCon, I got the call because so many people canceled at MegaCon. They worked their way down the list to me, and so I got the call to go to MegaCon and set up there. And I was set up there, and I don't know, one of the first days, I can't remember. JC comes by. He picks up a copy of Trump's. We talk a little bit about it, have a good conversation. And then the next day he comes by and he says, "Hey, where's number 2?" So
Nice.
I like this one. I want number 2. And so we had a really good conversation there. I think I put I put all the Silverline stuff in the bag, and he emails me, said, "Hey, I really," and so we just started emailing back and forth. And from my side anyway, we really hit it off. JC likes what Silverline's doing. And we just talked about a lot of different things. And then I had the opportunity again to sit down with him at this year's MegaCon, and we just had a nice chat, and it's exciting to see what all he is going to do. So that's kind of how I met JC. So JC, my first question to you would be, what caused you to decide I want to go be an entertainment lawyer?
So that's a little bit of a story. Originally, I was not planning on being a lawyer. My first vocational love was actually for the film industry. I wanted to be a director, a producer, and as well as a screenplay writer. And so that's what I was focused on from the time I was 12 years old. I went to a mega church in Tampa, Florida, and got to, from the time I was 12, I started serving in the TV ministry. Went on, started like a youth film group and
Cool.
made short films. And then I got certified in multiple multimedia fields. And I've got Adobe, After Effects, Premiere Pro, 3D design, animation, special effects. Like I got just a flurry of professional level certifications, and then I started a small production company, Manifested Visions. I ran that for about a decade. But
so
then,
the asterisk to your law career is that if you want videos made, they can call you too, right?
right? Yes, sir. And so one day it'll come in handy when I'm making ads for my offer.
That's right.
And so,
Can't afford a film crew? Hire JC Barton, attorney at large.
And so, that was my focus originally. And then when I graduated, not law school, but when I graduated from high school, I was actually homeschooled from the start of 3rd grade straight through high school. And in Florida, there's this big homeschool convention that happens every year in the Orlando area, put on by HSLDA and FPEA, 2 different homeschool and parent education groups. And so anyway, it happens at the Gaylord Palm Resort. And one of the speakers at the graduation was a representative out of Texas, Representative Rick Green. And while he was giving his speech, great motivational speech, but he mentioned a program, Patriot Academy, which was an elite political training program. And my dad was like, "Hey, you should apply for that." And so I decided to apply. They get thousands of applications every year. They only accept 100, and 25 out of that 100 is reserved for alumni.
Wow.
But I applied, I got in, and basically you go to Texas for a week, you go to the state capitol, and you get to participate in the political process from beginning to end. You have to go there with one or more bills that you're going to try and get passed in the law, go through committee, get it, through the calendar committee, then get it onto the House floor, debate it on the House floor, watch it go to the Senate, and try and get it passed in the law. And so I got to learn U.S. history from David Barton. I got to, meet a lot of state senators and representatives. I got to meet the governor, who at that time was Governor Rick Perry of Texas, and just really had an amazing time. At the end of this experience, I actually won the Rookie of the Year award, which was the #1 award you could win as a first-time PAer.
Cool.
And
Awesome.
thank you. And coming back from that experience, I had this passion for law. Coming back from that, and so so there I was, I still had my vocational law for film, and now I also had one for law. And so I was like, okay, well, there's a spot where these two things meet on the Venn diagram, and so and that was entertainment law, and so that's how I landed there.
That's interesting. Yeah, and you have to ask that just because I'm sure we've all got know lawyers in our circles. Hello, John Crowther. How you doing? We've all got lawyers. For those who don't know, John Crowther, the writer of Teen Beetle, is also an attorney. John, if you're listening, I apologize. I'm going to get this wrong. I think he's a real estate attorney. I think that's his specialty. So we all know lawyers and kind of our, what's that?
A different type of property.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't, you got Curtis and Roberta probably remember the only real entertainment lawyer I think I've ever known is Will McGuire.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did you just laugh, Roberta?
Yes, I did. That's funny.
But JC, I was telling you that Malibu used to have an entertainment attorney on staff that handled it, and that was Will McGuire. That was he had an office in our building, and that's what he did from morning until night. He took care of all of the legal stuff that Malibu did. So
I'm sure he was busy.
Oh, he was very busy. Yeah. And we were always having him run trademark. Hey, we got a name for a character, and we would just send him names and stuff like this, and he'd come back. It's available. You want me to get it? And I'm like, yeah, get it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So when you decided to change from exclusively film to entertainment law, was there? I mean, were there obstacles in your path that says no? You need to. This is what you need to keep doing this.
So there weren't really any obstacles in my path. I mean, I was pretty heavily in getting involved in the film industry in Florida. So I had built a strong and growing network of connections in the local film industry. Leading up to starting law school, I was traveling all over the state, doing films here, there, and the other place. I got to go to the Movie Guide's Red Carpet Gala in Hollywood, and just do like a bunch of amazing things in the industry. But as far as like impediments, there really weren't any. I was blessed to have an opportunity to do an internship at a law firm that's here in Orlando, and so I ended up having a mentor who's a lawyer who knew my dad, and then I was able to work at his firm and get some hands-on experience. And so
nice.
My parents were not opposed to the idea
that's
of
good
into law or anything like that. So it was a pretty smooth transition as far as all of it is concerned.
That's important. It as Silverline likes to stress family here, because we believe that that's a very important part of everything that we are and that we do here. Wubba says about 1 more month, boss man. Okay, and this goes back to him joining us. Glad to hear that, Wubba. You are missed, sir. He says Cat Mouse 4 is almost done, and I want to finish it before I move. That is exciting.
Good idea.
Everybody here, Wubba, I guess you can hear all the cheers for that. So very much looking forward to that. So JC, if you said, all right, I'm gonna take and pass the bar in July, and then I can plot myself into my ideal job. We know you got to work to get there, but if you could take yourself after passing the bar and just plop yourself into that ideal job, what would that be?
So that would be a position where I get to work mainly on the film side of things, related to trademark and copyrights in the film industry, making extremely good money. Six-figure income, doing trademark and copyright law within the film industry. That would be the ideal position for me.
Cool. Now, you told me, and so some of these things I'm not. Does he want people to know this? Because you and I have talked about this. So I know that you're going to your intent is to operate in Florida. Will that make you exclusive to Florida, or?
So an interesting aspect of intellectual property law is that a lot of IP law is federal, and it's at the federal level as opposed to the state level, just so that there can be continuity across the board when it comes to most intellectual property law. So certain boundaries that might be there if I were looking to focus in other areas of law, those boundaries won't necessarily be an issue when it comes to intellectual property law.
Wow.
Also, I do intend to take the bar in California as well, so I'll have Florida and California under my belt.
Sweet.
That's great.
Yeah. Now, the reason that you want to do this is a question. The reason that you want to do Florida and California obviously is where the hub of the entertainment industry is, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because especially these days, more and more content is being created outside of Hollywood, but lots of the decision making, from what I've witnessed and from what I understand, lots of the decision making at the top levels is still taking place inside of Hollywood. And so, when you're dealing with the legal side of things, you're generally dealing with the decision makers as opposed to the people actually necessarily on the ground making the content itself. So it's important to be able to to have that inroad and all the necessary licensing and stuff inside of the state where the decisions are being made.
I would say as for us being the people on the on the ground a lot of time, we never saw a lot of that stuff. Certainly not at Malibu. Excuse me. That was stuff that you say, here's what we need, and they say, okay, we got it. And then it would just happen.
Yes, sir.
Roberta and Curtis, y'all have before I have a long list of questions to ask him, but y'all have anything that you can think of you want to ask?
I'm still not quite sure what legal issues I would have as an artist, other than maybe someone stealing my work offline. That would be the level of concern I would have.
Okay, well, let's look. Can I turn that one into a question for you?
Yes.
So if you're an artist here, JC, if you're an artist like Roberta, and she has posted some of her artwork online and discovers that someone has appropriated her artwork for stuff, what are her what's her options? What can she do? What's her rights, and what rights have they trampled on, and so what can she do?
So I will preface my answer with this. Legally, there are certain things I can say and I cannot say, even when I know a lot more than I can say, until after I've taken the bar.
Okay. We don't want you to say anything that you can't, that will get you in trouble.
Yeah. Safe answers.
We'll how about we do this? We'll go ahead and on the air here, we'll go ahead and ask you back for after you've passed the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Would that work?
Have a little bit of free time.
Okay. So what can you tell us then? What
So I can give you like general descriptions of the law and what the law says. I can also give you the advice to go talk to a lawyer about whatever the issue might be. It's obviously it's great to have friends who are lawyers who who deal with these sort of issues and stuff, because if you ever have an issue, you can you have that instant line of contact. You can reach out and get some help and assistance and advice.
Well, if I can add a personal anecdote, that happened to me recently. I haven't had a chance to update you, but
really,
But I had to get a lawyer to send out my first cease and desist letter just about a week ago. Yeah,
Oh no.
yeah. So I found out that a company, which I won't go into super details, but I found out they had taken my artwork and were using it for one of their online articles and had been using it for about 17 months without me being aware of it.
No way.
Oh.
Yes. So I talked to the legal team that I work with, and we drafted our cease and desist letter and sent it over there. And they took it down because it was they weren't supposed to be doing that. And the funniest thing is I talked to my friends who are, far more ahead in their art industry career and stuff like that. And they said, well, this is great. I said, what do you mean? They said, congratulations, you've officially made it. You sent out your
someone's stolen your art.
Somebody stole your art.
Rite of passage.
Yeah, I guess I'll take it that way. But
Yes.
yeah,
I don't know if I'd find it cool, but I did quite a passage.
So I know a comic creator, and he created this character, Captain China. And so really great art and stuff. You can, find it if you do a quick Google search. But anyway, and he's from China. He came here when he was really young. But anyway, he found out that in China there were action figures of his character being sold. They have full-blown Captain China merchandise, Lego type figures, action figures, the whole 9 yards, whole kit and caboodle. And he is seeing this much return.
Wow.
So,
that is what I'm talking about. It can happen.
Yeah, and so it's of course it's a lot harder to try and enforce copyrights in China because one, the Chinese government is not as cooperative by any stretch of the imagination. And then there's other factors there with the differences in copyright law and things like this. So, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Wow. Wubba adds, and this is why I don't post much stuff on the net.
It's a catch-22, because these days, I mean, most people are not going to find your stuff if you don't have an online presence. But at the same time, by having the online presence, you do open yourself up to the possibility that somebody nefarious.
I just thought of a question. Can I ask?
Yeah.
Can I ask about that online presence? So is that a tool possibly to be used to ascertain your validity of being a creator if you were the first one to have it online?
So by law, any evidence of, as far as the timeline and when this was created and stuff, any evidence that's relevant to that will most likely be admissible for the purpose of proving, hey, this is, I made this website in, 2000 and X, right? And here are all the receipts and blah, 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 right? Like that would be a great evidence to show that, that you've had it for that period of time. One interesting thing about, if you were to just jot something down in a notebook, I mean, unless you dated it or something like that, I mean, it's really hard to prove, okay, this is when I wrote it down,
Yeah.
But if something's online, there's hard evidence, you can look into metadata on files, or you could, just go and pull up the receipts on when the website was created or something like that, or when the document was uploaded. So things like this can definitely be used as evidence for when you created your work.
That's good.
Yeah.
Could you remark on, I know that they talk about, like, was it Creative Commons copyright law? Like if you publish something, you essentially, or you create something, you have, as I understand it, some type of copyright in it, but that's also different than necessarily getting a trademark or a patent or something in that. Could you describe how somebody navigates the differences between those two?
So in intellectual property, there's three main pillars of it. There's trademark, there's copyright, and there's patent. So copyright are for works of art, whether it's music, a written work like a book, a drawing of a new character, right? A story, works of art, all of that falls under copyright. and you have the right to copy that. You have the right to display or perform it in public. There are a handful of rights that come with that copyright. A trademark, on the other hand, that is used for whether they be sounds or logos or words that are used to identify goods or services. So, for example, the yellow M, right, is used to identify the goods of hamburgers, French fries, things like this, right? And so that is an example of a trademark. It is a mark that is attached to the trade of those specific goods, right? And so, and the list goes on as far as examples are concerned. A patent is different from the others in that a patent is for inventions. And so you can have utility patents, you can have design patents, but basically these are for, if you were to come up with a new drug, or you were, in some cases, to invent new plants to a certain extent, you can get some patents on those. So basically, if you invented the computer, right, you would be able to get a patent on that, or a new type of computer, you can get a patent on that. So there, different things fit into different wheelhouses. Now, in some cases, there's some overlap. So for example, someone might come up with a screenplay. Well, the screenplay can be copyrighted. Then the name of the screenplay, they want that to be attached to the goods of all of the goods that they'll be selling, all the merchandise they'll be selling as part of the screenplay. Right? So let's say the screenplay is Star Wars, but Star Wars, the name is also going to be attached to these, these glow in the dark sticks and these cloaks and these other things that are going to be sold in connection with it, right? And so that's going to be trademarked, right? So the screenplay is copyrighted, the name is trademarked. And then while making the film, George Lucas is like, okay, I need to do things that there currently is no technology to do. So I'm going to invent technology that doesn't currently exist so that I can do these different shots on the speed racers and all this stuff. And that new invention that he creates is then patented, right? And so that's kind of an example of the three things kind of working together. And then as far as a copyright is concerned, the biggest thing is, yes, you do have a copyright on your work the moment you create it. But the best part about registering is that the law presumes notice on everyone when you have registered your copyright. It serves one as proof that you created the work and when you created the work, right? So there's like that timeline. And then also the law basically assumes that once something has been registered as a copyright, everybody has notice of it, right? So, if you come up with character X and then somebody else in New Jersey comes up with a character that's substantially similar to character X, if neither of you know about each other, neither of you influence each other, nobody was like, y'all weren't having conversations, you have no idea who each other is, right? Well, if neither one of you has registered, then there are different rules that go into play on, okay, well, who owns the character? Do both of you get to keep your own respective characters in a respective area? And there are different rules that go into that. But if one of you have registered your copyright, then now the other one is presumed to be on notice, right? So as of the date of whenever that copyright was made. And so there's just a wider breadth of protection that comes with registering your copyright. And then as far as Creative Commons is concerned, so you can choose, like Creative Commons generally, some copyright owners will allow their work to be used for different purposes. And so you can choose to allow people to have certain rights. So think of a copyright as like a bundle of sticks, right? Any property you own, right? We're talking about intangible property, but any property you own, there's like a bundle of sticks that comes, right? And there's like, for example, movie rights to the character. There's the rights to create roller coasters for the character. There's the book rights for the character, the comic book rights for the character, the rights to distribute any of the aforementioned things for the character, right? So, for example, you might have sold Universal the total rights to make movies based on your Harry Potter character, but you haven't sold them the right to make the roller coaster, or any sort of theme park based on the character. So now they have to rent that from you, and they thought they owned it, but they don't because you sued them and you won the court case. Right?
A lot of paydays for you, though.
And so now you're a billionaire because you hadn't given them that stick. You gave them the stick for the movies. You didn't give them the stick for the roller coasters and the theme park rides, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's like a bundle of sticks, and you maintain any stick that you don't contract or otherwise give away to somebody else. And so with the Creative Commons, you can choose to allow your works to be used, for non-commercial purposes, for example, or for any purposes with attribution, so they might have to, give you a shout out or something like that. But that's the gist. You can choose to do that. You might be familiar. There's a gentleman named Kevin MacLeod. He has a company, I believe it's called Incompetech, and it's the #1 producer of Creative Commons music in the world right now. Because if you're making films or if you're doing YouTube shows or whatever, everybody wants to have music, whether it's a little Google at the beginning or end, or whether they're just making a film or commercial. But it's very expensive to get licensing for music, to use it for television spots or whatever. And so this guy, Kevin MacLeod, he created he's a music composer. He just has all of his things Creative Commons. And so you can either buy a license for a very, very decent price to use his work without attribution, or you can use his works for free. You just have to say, give him credit, right? Music by Kevin MacLeod, blah, 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 with his website link and stuff like this. And so because he did that, he actually used Creative Commons as a means to really become prolific. And so, now, he's got a whole Wikipedia page dedicated to him. You put up his name in Google, you'll get all these articles and, all of this sort of stuff. His music's been in, on TV commercials and movies, like it's just, but that's, and the difference between the three and a little bit about the Creative Commons.
That's great.
That's pretty cool.
Good advice.
My daughter just sold, she just got money for selling. She put some of her music up on for sale, and she got a pretty decent check for selling, but she's not even sure where it's used, right? And it's like, okay, I guess that's cool because she has, she made it available there. Someone purchased it, someone used it, and we're not sure how to find where that is. Because we'd kind of like to see it, like if it's in a commercial or whatever, we'd kind of like to see it. Wubba says they can find me on the credits page of Cat and Mouse,
There you go.
or through Facebook. Royal Airships says I'm digging Roland's shirt. Can't wait to see you in Pittsburgh. Which, by the way, is in 1 week. I'll be in Pittsburgh at Three Rivers Comic Con, along with Royal Airships and Scott Wakefield. I don't know. Is Royal Airships a secret? So I don't know whether it is. He gives thumbs up. It's because I showed him my shirt, right? Meaning, is Royal Airships your secret identity? That was the question. I don't want to reveal. It's kind of like knowing who Spider-Man is and not telling the secret identity. Okay, so other questions, you guys?
Well, one thing I'd be curious, and I think I would just kind of wonder if I'm correct in this understanding, right? With trademarks, you were talking about that idea of the bundle of sticks and the different ways things can be used. Isn't it also like if you were wanting to get a trademark, you have to get a trademark not just for the comic book, but a separate trademark and the fee associated with it for trademarking it for film, trademarking it for clothing, if you were the holder of the intellectual property and wanted to kind of insulate yourself that way.
So the law allows you to get a trademark and associate it with whatever goods and services you wish to associate it with. Now there are, a flurry of rules about what makes a strong versus a weak trademark, but you could, have a trademark and associate it with literally whatever goods or services you want. Now, there are rules as far as, the more categories, the more potential obstacles you could run in with getting your trademark approved, right? Because there might be, for example, we're all familiar with Coca-Cola. but there are other companies with the name Coca-Cola that
Really?
sell car equipment or sell things that are completely and utterly unrelated to drinks, right? And so and that's allowed because Coca-Cola as a company, its trademark is associated with specific goods, right? And in their case, beverages. Whereas you can get, a trademark that, as long as it won't confuse the public, so that when you look at it, you can tell right off the back, okay, it says Coca-Cola, but this is not the drink.
So theoretically, it could be Coca-Cola Comics.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
Provided that there is not a risk of confusing the public as to
the drink.
Right, as to the so as long as the public the reasonable person in the public would look at it and not be confused and think, oh, the drink company, then yes, that is something that can be done.
Wow. Okay. Royal Airships he goes, haha, spill the beans. Okay, so Royal Airships is Rory Boyle of Steam Patriots. So he says, is there a bundle deal to get everything covered?
So okay, here's what I'm going to say. I would say that anyone who's looking to get a trademark, definitely go speak with a good lawyer and ask all of these questions so that you can get specific advice as far as your specific circumstances concerned. I will say this: I worked for a trademark law firm. Had a great internship with a trademark law firm here in Florida, and one thing we came into a lot of clients is that people would try and save money by not hiring a lawyer on the front end because you don't need a lawyer to apply for a trademark. But then they would run into all these issues because there are a lot of peculiarities with the law and there are a lot of specifics and different things like this. And then when the USPTO would respond and say, here are all these issues with your application, right? Then they would need to hire lawyers to then fix their application, and it actually costs more to fix a bad application than to file a proper one in the beginning, right? Wow. So it was actually costing them more in lawyer fees to fix their mistakes than it would have cost them if they just hired the lawyer, right? And so keep that in mind as well. Get a good lawyer, ask them all your questions, and and just get it done right the first time.
Yeah, and I think so I should probably add because when I met at MegaCon, anyone who's listening can would you say can rightfully assume you are you also wear a geek badge?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I do. I inherited that badge from my dad, actually. He bestowed it upon me at a young age. I've been wearing it proudly ever since.
So you probably know. So the thing about comics is, and of course you're talking with a group of folks who absolutely love comics, despite the things that I'm about to say. The part of the problem with comics is that it's just such a small industry. I think I remember I told you how much money I made from a publisher back in the 90s when there was a lot of money going around. They sent me a check, right? And I was like, okay, thank you for this $75 you just sent me, right? So the thing about comics is that it's notoriously small and there's just not much money in it. So I think that this is why particularly independent creators are seeking ways, and Roy, I'm not targeting you because you asked a question that I know everybody wants to know when you ask, is there a bundle that covers everything? Is that comic creators are always, independent comic creators are always looking for shortcuts because there's just not money. It's like, I don't know where I'm going to get this money. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't afford this. And so that, I'm sure you've seen it enough to know this is why you get a lot of that.
Right. And that's definitely, very true. I think, the only thing that, like the one asterisk I would say is that, it's not so much that there isn't money. It's just that the people who are willing to pay don't know you exist. Okay.
Ooh, I like that.
When you look at let's look at the manga genre, right? It's blown up. I mean, the numbers are astronomical. And we're talking about manga, like the actual physical book, right? Demon
Right.
Slayer is one single book, and it
Yeah.
outsold the entire American comic book industry,
I know,
right?
that's
And not
crazy.
even by a little bit. Like it straight up just blew it out of the water. And that's one. That doesn't even take into account all of the other mangas that are out there, right?
Right.
And so the thing is, though, one of the reasons there are a few reasons that kind of coincided, but one of the reasons that manga is doing so well right now is because when people look at the American comic book industry, all they see is Marvel and DC. And so
Yeah.
if they don't like what they see, they look elsewhere. Okay. And so because of that, because they think all that's there is, what they see, the biggest
Mhm.
name, if they don't like it, they look elsewhere. And the elsewhere thus far, at least in recent years, has been anime, has been manga.
Yeah.
And so, there are a lot of dollars that would be flowing into, independent comic book creators' pockets that simply aren't, just because people don't know,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so they're getting that fill on the anime side or on the manga side when they would be spreading the love, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Indie creator. So I think the money's definitely there. The hunger's definitely there. The comic book movies, which have done so well, have driven a lot of interest. We don't see that in American comic book sales because people who are interested, they get interested by the movies, they come over to get the comic. They see comics that don't even kind of reflect what they've seen in the movies.
Mhm.
So then, they still got this interest, but the comics they're looking at aren't interesting. But hey, look, there's manga, right?
Right.
And so people are just kind of funneling in and then skipping over,
Yeah.
the two big names and then going straight into the whole anime shtick. And as well as people who've liked comics for a while, who are just consumers, have done the same thing. So.
Well, I got a question for you that you might not be able to answer. But so one of the things that I know is an obstacle for comic creators. Say you got a comic creator from, let's just say Winter Springs, Florida, right? And that's where they're from. They went there. They really haven't been outside of the world at all. They've got this comic. They've created this comic. They do all the local shows, right? They do all the small local shows to promote their work. But they haven't even been, let's just say they haven't even been through Diamond. No one knows they exist outside of this little Florida circle. And you can find these kind of examples all over the U.S., right, of independent comic book creators like that. They have no connections to Hollywood or toy manufacturers or anything like that that could potentially bring them money outside of the comic book they're making. Would an entertainment attorney be able to provide those connections? So once you pass the bar, could someone come to you and say, "Hey, JC, I need you to represent me. I need movie deals. Because that sounds more like an agent to me."
So one thing that I realized, and I was actually surprised by this, when I did an internship in Hollywood, is I was completely surprised by how many people working behind the scenes are lawyers.
Wow.
I mean, and I'm not talking about, how many lawyers are lawyers. I mean, like people in completely different positions, completely different avenues, agents,
That's
film
begging for a joke,
producers.
isn't it?
Hmm?
That's just begging for a lawyer joke, isn't it? How many people behind the scenes in Hollywood are lawyers?
Oh my God. but I was actually really surprised by this, and and that includes agents. And so
Really?
I actually had a great conversation with a gentleman who's a really major agent in Hollywood, and he was a lawyer, and and obviously he's not actively practicing in law anymore. He's focused more on, the agent
Right.
side of things. But yeah, he was a lawyer. And so my point being is, if you find the right entertainment lawyer, then yes, that will actually help you. And, you can, discuss with him what payment and stuff like that would look like. But if you find the right entertainment lawyer, then yes, that actually could help you, not just avoid bad contracts, but actually find some good ones. Right. Right. And so, so that's definitely the case.
And that's something that I hear, frequently on the con circuit, is that, oh, I'd love to have my comic made into a TV show or a movie, but I don't know anybody. I don't know how to make. I know how to make my comic, but I don't know anybody who could do that. So I know that a lot of people who make comic books would love to have just the information, how to get there. Where's the path?
Right. So, I mean, I know a few people who have some I know some people who really have some wisdom as far as how to operate and find that track in Hollywood, and how to go about going through the entire pitching process, and just all of that. It takes some work, it takes some dedication, but definitely the opportunities are there. They're definitely there. It's for people who are on the outside of the building, they don't realize how many open doors there are on the inside, but there are tons of open doors.
Oh, that's cool to hear.
Yes, sir. There are tons of open doors. If you just, it does help to know the right people, but I would encourage anybody who's perfected their craft, and they've got a good story, and they've had some critical people look over their story and still got thumbs up, and they think that it's ready to take to that sort of a level. I really would encourage them to get in touch with a good entertainment lawyer, and see who'd be willing to to have that discussion with them.
Yeah,
definitely. I was just talking the other night with some friends that I know that work in animation, and some are directors and kind of high up the chain, and they were talking about how so much of it also is about bringing in the audience, right? Like the studio, if you have your built-in audience, then the studio is more likely to do it. There's people that have worked in animation for a long time that are capable skill-wise, but they just don't have the brand recognition as an entity unto themselves, where actually somebody with a huge Instagram following base will become a showrunner on a show ahead of the animation veteran with 30 plus years, because this person with the Instagram following can say to the studio, hey, I'm bringing this audience with it, and these metrics are like a proven commodity that the other person who has more experience doesn't have. And some of them were actually expressing their displeasure, that they were kind of frustrated that that's kind of the game, part of the game nowadays for some of the guys that are a little long in the tooth.
Right. Yeah, I think there's something Robert Kiyosaki says. You can get mad at the game, or you can learn how to play it. This is the industry that that you've chosen to be in, right? And so if you're going to be in the industry and you know the game, play the game to win, right? You don't like sacrifice your integrity to play the game, but you can play the game without sacrificing your integrity, right? You have your lines that you don't cross, and then you play the game to win, right? And so it's one of those things where that's the truth, right? But hey, imagine if you are somebody with the superior skill and you've got a good following, right? Well, that's going to push you above the person with just the following but lesser skill, right?
Yeah.
And so, again, you play the game to win, right? I think that sometimes, one thing that would help indies and different creators overall is if, there was even more of a community as far as, followings and stuff are concerned. I think sometimes there's a fear that, okay, I've got my line of content and my products, and if I shout out too many people, maybe my fans won't have enough money to spend on my stuff, or
Yes.
or
I've absolutely seen some of that. Yeah.
And I think that overall, the community as a whole would be benefited with less of that sort of a mindset. And maybe the silver bullet to that would be to come up with a way where if they either a platform or something where you can actually incentivize the sort of networking that really can strengthen the community, right? If there's a way to really make that be in people's self-interest, right? Then we could end up with a community so big we might not even need to go outside in order to start producing.
And I got to give you a huge shout out, because I think you're the first guest on the show that's ever said Robert Kiyosaki, and I'm a big fan of Robert Kiyosaki. Like, one of my favorite sayings of his is always is if you don't care about money, money doesn't care about you. And and his book Rich Dad Poor Dad is like absolutely mind changing. It is.
Yes.
That guy.
What's that name again? I got to write this one down.
Robert Kiyosaki.
How do you spell that, Kiyosaki?
Go for it, JC.
So it's not exactly spelled how it sounds, but
it sounds Japanese.
It is Japanese. It's Kiyosaki.
Okay, I would have gotten close.
Yes, sir. Robert Kiyosaki, and he's got great book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think anybody who's in the comic book industry, I think you should read Rich Dad Poor Dad, because it's going to help you just with how to look at your resources and money. There's a business component to producing the comics that's really important.
But my art. And
the thing is, right, in the beginning, you're doing it all yourself, right?
Yes.
So you need to have, yes, your expert level knowledge in the art and the craft, but then you need to have at least intermediate knowledge in the business side of things, or you need to have a business expert partner, right? Until you can get to the point where you can pay somebody and basically outsource that knowledge need, right? And so so in the beginning, everybody needs to be in on that. So I would say that's a great one just to help you with with how to look at money, how to look at achieving success. The EMyth is also a really good book by Michael Lee Gerber. That's going to help you to create turnkey systems inside of your company, which if comic book creators could figure out how to do this, I think Kablam, I think it is, who you actually shouted out earlier. I think they're actually pretty close to doing this. I mean, they've become a very big company with a lot of indie creators going to them to get stuff produced. And I think that they've gotten really close to perfecting their turnkey system. But if a comic book creator can perfect a turnkey system, I mean, you can crank out high quality comic books as just as consistent as the taste of McDonald's is from one store to the next, right? And so the EMyth by Michael Lee Gerber is another really, really good one. If between these two books, you can really start soaking in some of the business savvy that will help you have more of a platform for the art side that you care about most.
Yeah, very cool. Martin says, Colors for Wolf Hunter, listening in. Glad to see you. And he says, turnkey system, the Marvel method. So Mark, when you say Marvel method, I think of something different, right? I think of the way the scripts were written. Yes, he says Roland will like that. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. Okay, so Tommy I haven't put Tommy's left us a message here, and he and I talked about this today, something that I wanted to bring up. But before I do that, I want to make sure that yeah, I was wondering if Tommy heard that. He goes, I like those Kablam guys. so full disclosure, JC, Tommy is a partner in Kablam.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I've known, I've known both of the partners, Tommy and his partner, Barry Gregory. I've known Barry since I was in 6th grade, and I've known Tommy since college.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, you know them.
Yeah. So it was just kind of cool to hear you pull them out of nowhere, and I'm like, hey, we know those guys at Kablam. So I'll just go ahead and kick it up here. So Tommy said normally he would have been here. He said, so sorry I couldn't make it again. He says, next week I'm back. He said, till then, y'all talk about my favorite, poster pirates. So for those who are listening, you might not know what poster pirates are. Tommy says he knows way too much. So I've heard them called poster pirates. I've heard them called print jockeys. But if you go to conventions these days, you're going to see them. They are, and I don't want to call them local so much, but they're often the local artist who's never made a comic book, but he's sitting there with a wall full of prints. I want to make sure I say prints. And they're all of Marvel, DC, Hollywood characters, aliens and Men in Black, and they're all full of characters that they don't own and they don't have the rights to. If you ever speak with one of them, this is what Tommy and I were laughing about this morning. The first thing they'll say was my art. Well, you drew it, yes. Wow. But dude, I've heard that so many times. They're like, you don't have the rights to do that. That's my art. I drew it, right? I'm like, no, you don't understand. You make it. So can you maybe tell us what the law says about this? Because that's for someone like me, that's like it's like a no-brainer. It's like, no, you don't do that.
So here's how I would state the law simply in a concise way. Is I would say, okay, the character is a copyrighted character, right? Let's take Batman. Batman's a copyrighted character. What that means is that DC has the sole ability, they have the right to copy that character. If you are not DC, but you are copying that character, it doesn't matter if you bring your own ink. It doesn't matter if you bring your own pencil. It doesn't matter if you use a printer or you use a pencil or a pen or a marker. If you are copying that character, you are infringing on their right.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's how I would explain the law on that.
It just seems way too simple.
Mm-hmm.
So I took common sense, honestly.
It does.
Yeah. It's like, now if you're, of course this wouldn't apply to the poster pirates we're talking about, right? But if you're, just kind of doodling for your own personal pleasure, that's one thing. But the moment you introduce pecuniary gain into the mix, right? That's where you're in trouble.
Yeah, you make money, right? Tommy says, bingo.
So by that rationale, I couldn't film a Star Wars movie on my phone and then charge people to watch it in my living room. And,
no.
Darn
it. Well, that was a joke, Disney. That was a joke.
They're always listening.
Yeah.
Curtis Medita's representation is not reflective of Silverline LLC.
Yeah. So Tommy and Barry both tell me, he said they get stuff all the time. People asking them, "Hey, I did this cool Batman print. Can you make 100 copies of it?" He's like, "No, not unless you've got a letter from them saying that it's okay for you to do." Tommy says, "No, your Star Wars movie is fine." Hey, Tommy, since you're on there, can I tell them the Todd McFarlane story? Do you give me permission to tell that story? Because I think it's a great story. But I'm not going to tell it without your permission. Royal Airships says, so at cons, I should dress up in a lawyer costume and hand out cease and desist letters.
Ooh, you wouldn't want to do
Make
that.
Okay, Tommy says yes. I can tell the story. So I may not get it completely right, but here's something that actually happened to them. They got a submission one time from a kid, like a very young artist, and I want to say that submission was Spawn. They had, but the kid had just drawn Spawn. It was clearly a kid. They said you could tell, and they're like, oh man, we feel bad, but you can't do this. This is you can't do it. You don't own the copyright. It's Todd McFarlane's thing. And so they sent him a nice message back, and then the father responded, we actually have Todd McFarlane's permission. Here it is. And they're like, what? So cool. Todd McFarlane actually gave them permission to print the book. How cool is that?
That's so
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, that's just, that's another reason that just makes me love the character, the person of Todd McFarlane. You know,
so it King did something like that too. Like you could have any stage play of any Stephen King book if you give him $1, as long as it's like a stage play for kid, like a college or something like that. You just have to send him $1. Something
I
along.
didn't know that.
Cool.
Check with him before you do that.
Right, of course.
I like the sound of that.
I had a question for JC, and I'm not too sure how familiar, but it's something I always thought was fascinating that I've heard about in recent years, which is like deal structures in entertainment where like, for instance, Star Trek or even Star Wars, there's certain things that supposedly in the back end, there's something where you can take a property and renew it or have a new version of it if you change it and it's 25% different. If it's 25% different, then somebody that's reintroducing it or the new director of the film gets more profits off the merchandise. Like, for instance, I heard that's why C-3PO has a red arm in the sequel trilogies, because that makes him 25% different. And so the J.J. Abrams crew would get more points on the merchandising because they introduced something different. I don't know if you've heard anything like that.
Wow, that sounds underhanded.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody else has heard anything like that, but I just thought it was interesting.
I have not heard anything about that, anything on that point. So I'm not going to comment on that aside from saying, that sounds interesting to me. But yeah, I'm not too familiar with that one.
Okay. Interesting.
So Fruitbat. So here's a good one. Fruitbat has this question, and I do want to address this. He says, "Wasn't there sort of an unwritten understanding that comics companies would allow people to make images of their characters for sale at cons, kind of to promote their characters, or is that just for Artist Alley?" So absolutely not. There is no, and I can say this for a fact, as me and Curtis and Roberta having been there at a big company and at Marvel, and having talked to some Marvel and DC editors in the last few years, that is absolutely not the case. And here's the reason. Here's part of what you have to understand about this. Okay, so if you're an Artist Alley artist and you just say, "Hey, I'm going to do something. I'm going to draw Wonder Woman." But I've decided I'm going to give Wonder Woman, and I don't know, I've decided I'm going to give Wonder Woman size 56 breast, right? Here's the problem, is that DC, unless you have the permission from them, DC has no control over what you do. They don't control that. So you could theoretically put Wonder Woman in any kind of clothing, garb,
compromising positions, whatever.
Compromise, yeah, exactly. And DC would say, no, we don't like that. So no, there was never any unwritten understanding. Absolutely not, because they don't want you to do that, because they want control of Wonder Woman. They want to, not just Wonder Woman, but all of them. They want to be able to have the say of, this is what Wonder Woman should look like. And if you don't get her right, if you abuse that, you can't do it. And this is why you have to license the character in order to do that. So no, there is that's we talked about, oh, it's my art. This is another thing that I hear sometimes is like, oh, well, they give people permission at conventions to do that because it promotes the character. No, they don't. They've
Yeah.
never done that.
I think Marvel and DC are doing pretty good on that side right now. So I don't think they need
Right? Yeah. They
your
don't,
help.
Yeah, you know,
They don't
none
need
of
your
us would
help.
know who Spider-Man is if it wasn't
Yeah.
for the Comic-Con, you know.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for posters at Comic-Con booths, you know. Like,
Table 35A, you know, really.
yeah, there it
If it
is.
wasn't for him, the company would be shambles.
Yeah. When people go to the movies, it's like, how did you hear about Batman? You know, it's like table 35A at the convention. You know, that's why.
Okay, so here's a good part two of this, and I know part of this answer. He says, Fruitbat says, so if an artist works for the company and is at a con, then what are they allowed to do?
So
You want to take that?
So, I mean, that's going to depend on what their contract is. You know, generally they're going to be allowed to do more things with the work that they've done for that company than somebody who hasn't done any work with that company. But it's going to depend on what their contract is. So.
Yeah. Well, for instance, Mike Zeck, right? So everybody knows Mike Zeck. Mike Zeck is the guy who did the first Spider-Man black costume cover for
Secret Wars.
Thank you, Secret Wars. I saw it. I could see it in my mind's eye, but I was like, "What?" I can't see it. Can't read the title. You know, if you go see Mike Zeck at a convention, he has that poster, right? That piece of art. That's his art, published by Marvel. So because Marvel printed it, it's an officially recognized, you know, approved version of it, and Zeck has the approval from Marvel to do that and to sell those at conventions, right? So do the poster pirates get canned? Oh, we sure wish they did. Unfortunately, they are running around like crazy at all the conventions.
You know what's interesting? A thought that just hit me, but not saying that I'm necessarily wishing a bunch of legal action on anybody, but you know, if they were to get quote canned, the indie scene at Comic Cons would become much more important.
Wouldn't it?
Much more important. Because
That's right.
now Artist Alley would only be true independent creators and those who have licenses, right? Who Marvel or DC or whoever has given a stick right to for a character, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, the actual indie creators their importance would quadruple, you know, in any given Artist Alley of any comic convention, you know, if that were to happen. And saying this, right, it's interesting because I wonder. I mean, there are multiple reasons why I think DC and Marvel don't pounce, right, if you will, on these poster pirates as they're called. But I almost wonder if maybe this is, you know, just a little part of the analysis, right? Is that well, if we did do this, right, even if hypothetically we receive no blowback to our image from going after the little guy, right? Right. You know, even if hypothetically we receive no blowback, well, now we've created a vacuum that these little competitors of ours will fill up and
that's a good
grow, right? And then potentially grow and maybe challenge us. Right. And so
that is an interesting thought. That's an evil, interesting thought.
Yeah.
See it happening though.
You know, so yeah, there could be a multiplicity of reasons as to why certain actions haven't been taken.
I have never even considered it that way. I know that you and I talked, you know, at MegaCon. One of the things that you know, I talked with a person from DC a couple of years ago, and they were aware of the problem, but they're like, you know, how do we police it? There's so many conventions, you know, every single weekend. There are multiple conventions around the U.S. weekend. You know, it's like, how do we police something like that? We don't have the manpower to go out and just start issuing all these cease and desist letters, you know.
It's kind of like the Carney attitude is kind of alive and well with the porch pirate. I mean, the pirates, the coaster pirates.
Coaster pirate, yeah.
So, you know, Mr. Rowland, what's funny though, right, about that statement is that all you have to do if you're Marvel or DC is you go after the con.
Yeah.
It's actually quite simple, right? Your argument is simple. You are facilitating. I could go really in depth with all the legal jargon, but it amounts to you are facilitating, right? And, therefore aiding, right? And that's your argument. You can go after, maybe get some sort of an injunction until the proceedings are completed. And you go after one or two big boys, and it's all the little cons are scared.
Yeah.
All the big cons are like, okay, let's hold up and let's pause pending the resolution of the court case, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, because think about it, right? Years of this going on, years of cons, and at every single one, poster pirates, right?
Yep.
So it could be easily argued, and in many cases, the exact same poster pirates at the exact same convention year after year after year. So you cannot claim, right, ignorance or anything, a lot of defenses that might be claimed, it makes it harder to claim them.
Yeah.
When you have the exact same person, this is all they do, and you've had them back year after year after year, and they tell you what they do when they apply to have a booth. They give you the link showing what they do and you have to evaluate it in order to give them the booth, right? So it makes it hard to claim a lot of defenses that might otherwise be available. And so, I'm just I'm just having ideas that none of their lawyers have ever had, but more likely, right? More likely than not, it's that there are reasons why they're not doing it, as opposed, and they don't include we can't do it,
right?
And so I think public image is a big one, right? There would be people who get sour on them if they feel that Marvel and DC are like going after the little guys, right? Because everybody looks at these billion-dollar corporations, but some guy making a couple $1,000s on y'all are gonna like destroy him or something, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they already do this, right? The Lightning McQueen guy, I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with this, but Lightning McQueen from Cars, there's a dude on TikTok. He created a literal life-size Lightning McQueen, perfect replica, eyes moved, all this sort of stuff. And his TikTok account garnered like hundreds of thousands or millions of views. He became the number one Lightning McQueen Cars related TikTok, like social media account or whatever. And so, not too long after that, he got the letter from Disney. Right.
Yeah.
And so, when I see stuff like that, and it's happened in other areas, you think, okay, well, they are willing to do that, right? They are willing to, go after the little guy, if you will, at least when they think that the influence is getting.
Well, so do you think some of it then is an economy of scale? They look at somebody, they look at a quote unquote a poster pirate in a convention and say, well, you know what? Yeah, there they are, but that's beneath our notice, so we're not even going to bother with that.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Maybe if I think that's a reasonable way to look at it, unless they've figured out that they could go after a con, right? Because if you go after the entire con, well, now every single poster pirate is just kind of looped into one group, right? And while any individual one, and you might say, oh, well, right. But when you combine all of them together and you look at the hundreds of thousands of dollars of business that might go on at any given comic convention, like any major one anyway, right? The combined monies that otherwise could have been going into like a DC property or Marvel property proper, right? Then that actually could arise to to the level of something worth checking into. Yeah. So I think if they're looking at it as like on an individual basis, I think it's reasonable to say, like you said, it's a scale issue.
Yeah, and that kind of makes sense. Well, yes, and this is one of the reasons I'm, of course, Daytona Beach Comic Con is one of our sponsors, so shout out to them again. But the Tom, the guy who runs that, he and I talked about this a little bit, and he is he's very aware. He's like, yeah, I don't want those guys at my show. You know, I want the people who make comic books. That's who I want at my show. He goes, I don't want someone just going to sit up there. You know, I don't know that he used the term poster pirates, but it's like, he said, I'm not looking for those kind of people. I want the people who make comic books, you know. Olo is another good one. Olo is in Orlando, and you know, I know that they're of the same mindset. They want people who make the comic books, and so that's why I'm a big fan of them. Fruit Bat's got a whole bunch of questions here.
Okay.
Let's see here. Roberta, do you want to? I've let the clock get by me. Do you want to let Curtis pop up there, or
Sure.
you want to keep going?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Curtis, you want to pop
I
up?
could keep going. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's cool. Let me just write something here, and I'll.
All right.
So I'm going to run through these, JC, and then I'll just kind of let you, because he's got several posts here, and I'll just kind of let you kind of pick which one you want to tackle here. So his first thing is, are the company artists allowed to make sketches of any characters of that company's library, or are they limited only to the characters they've worked on? Are the comics artists allowed to use actors or people's likenesses, or where does the line get drawn? In the 80s and 90s, Amy Grant sued for her likeness on a Marvel cover, but recently an artist used Hilary Duff's face for a painted cover for Sheena, and Frank Miller snuck in Helena Bonham Carter's face on one of the girls in Sin City on a panel.
So the first question, as far as, you know, what can a writer or an artist do or do not, as far as, you know, characters they've drawn or haven't drawn during their time working with the company, that's all going to be decided by them and the company, right? So you know, they've got that contract, that'll handle that. As far as using people's likenesses, you know, that is kind of going into the same thing, right? If you're directly using somebody's likeness, they have a right to their own image. And, you know, this is, you know, part of the reason why actors make money, right? Is that they have a right to their own image.
Because they're good looking.
Right. You know, and the same thing with models, right? You can't just, you know, here's this famous model. Let me just Photoshop her onto my cover and with my product, and, you know, let's slap one of my comic books in her hand like she's reading it, and, you know, and boom, you know, world famous model using my comic book, right? Well, they have, every human being has a right to their likeness, right? Now, models actually monetize that right?
Yeah,
taking that bundle of stick and, you know, selling that stick, right? You know, a piece of that stick for whatever price their agents agree on. But yeah, so everybody's got that, and so you could definitely run into some issues if you illegally use someone's likeness, you know, without having permission. So, you know, you want to definitely make sure you read up on the law on that. Speak to a lawyer if you're trying to use a particular person's likeness. You know, if you're trying to use a living person versus a person who's passed away, definitely go speak to a lawyer, right? Who can give you some advice on the specifics of whoever you might be trying to draw as far as a likeness.
Dead people tend to be less litigious, right?
You'd be surprised. You would be surprised. You'd be surprised. People's estate will bring them out of the grave so that they can sue you. So, there are some very litigious estates.
So I want to go back to part of his question here. When he talks about, are the company artists allowed to make sketches of any of the characters? Okay, so one of the things I want to maybe kind of define here before we go into me asking you the direct question, you know, there are sketches and there are prints. Now, an artist can go make a fantastic drawing. Let's keep using Batman. Make a fantastic drawing of Batman. You know, pencil, ink it, color it, make prints, you know, go down to the print shop and, you know, make 100 copies of that, stick it in their box and sell prints at the show. Or they can get a stack of typing paper and someone can walk up and say, hey, can you draw Batman for me? and they can do a commission, a one-off. They'll just draw it right then and there and hand that person that original piece of art as a commission. There are many who believe that the prints are 100% absolutely illegal, but there are many who believe that the sketch is a commission, so it is a private transaction between two people, and therefore it doesn't fall under the same rules as the print. So I could come to you and say, "Hey, JC, draw Batman for me," and you're like, "Well, I can't make prints." I'm like, "No, I want to buy the original," and you draw it, and I give you money for it, and that's different because that's a private commission. Can you address that at all without getting in trouble?
So if okay, so DC has copyright for Batman, which means they have the right to copy, which means if I copy without their permission, I've infringed upon their right. It doesn't matter if, the person who's asking me to copy is standing right in front of me, or if I copied before meeting them, right? If I've copied, I've copied. So if I don't have, permission or a license from them to make copies, I can't make copies. Whether I'm using a printer or I'm using a pen or pencil, whether, I'm doing it for one person or 5,000 people.
Right.
Now if like I alluded to earlier, if you're just drawing for your pleasure and, let's say as an example, you are drawing because you just want to give a piece of art to some children's hospital just so that they can, have neat art or something like that. Yeah. And all the kids like Batman. And so, you spend your own time, your own money to create this large drawing of Batman and you give it to them for free, right? You make it clear that you don't own Batman. I'm sure they already know, but you make it clear that you don't own Batman. You're not doing this on behalf of DC or anything like that. Well, and you're not kind of making any pecuniary gain off of doing it. In fact, you've spent money on this. That's going to be a different issue in the eyes of the law, right? But as far as copying and selling art, I mean, if you've copied without permission, right, then you have infringed upon their right.
Yeah. Okay, good. That was a very cool answer. And there's so many, I think, of these sketches. I would almost say that those are probably more prevalent in conventions than poster pirates, because all of them do it. All the artists is like, hey, I'll do commissions for you. Who do you want? I want you to draw Punisher or Batman or Spider-Man. And they'll a lot of artists have a big long commission list. So
and now one thing that I've noticed some of the comic companies do is they'll have these blank cover issues that they'll make and then they'll send out, and they're you could speak with a lawyer or contact the company, whether it's Marvel or DC, to see, okay, well, what are they allowing when they're sending out these blank copies, right? And you might find that, okay, they're allowing X, Y, and Z. So within these very strict guidelines that they have set, they're allowing things to be done on these blank cover issues.
Yeah.
But
to someone on the outside looking in, and Roberta and Curtis, y'all correct me if you think I'm misspeaking here, that would almost seem the sketch covers, right? That would almost seem like Marvel and DC are saying, hey, we're printing a sketch cover. That's almost, from my mind, saying we're giving you permission to hire someone to draw on it.
I kind of see it.
Yeah.
I mean, why else would they print a sketch cover? Yeah. If they did not intend for you to commission an artist to draw on it.
You just put
it's not finished.
So you can doodle on it.
Put your to-do list, pick up groceries. Read my comic book at the same time.
Yeah.
But I don't know the answer to that. I honestly would like to know.
Yeah. Tommy said, I agree, but what do Marvel and DC think we're going? I think he meant who, but who do Marvel and DC think we're going to draw on the sketch covers? Yeah, I mean, I think to me the sketch cover thing is almost and I know that's not the law, but to me it's like a Marvel and DC they printed a sketch cover. That's all. That's to me. That's them telling me, okay, buy this sketch cover and then go pay somebody to do a drawing on it. So, Tommy says maybe they're just printing. Maybe they're just blank covers, saving them money.
Yeah, I think that you could contact the companies or get in touch with the lawyer, and then and either see what Marvel and DC say directly about their purpose with printing this, or speak with the lawyer about it. But
would that be if that was an argument, if there was some kind of legal stuff that came up, how would that argument hold up?
I think that argument, or an argument, approximating that, would hold up a lot better than anything a poster pirate could say.
Yeah. And I will say there are, I have seen a bunch of artists. I shouldn't say a bunch. I have seen some artists in artist alleys that what they do is they go out and buy a bunch of blank covers, for themselves. And then that's what they do. They just sit with the blank covers at their table. Some of them already have art, but they have the blank covers. And then you can come along and commission them to draw something on those covers. And I think that's a good idea for those artists, because that gives them, I don't know, that gives them to me, that gives them a little something extra. Look, I've got these blank covers that Marvel and DC printed, so I'm just going to draw on it for you. And then you've got the Marvel and DC thing, and I don't have to be a poster pirate then.
Right. Exactly.
Fruitbat said, did you already talk about trademark versus copyright? We did, Fruitbat. We talked about that a little earlier, but you do have another question that I wanted to get back to. Let's see here. And
I've got to ask real quick. So Are we watching a comic book be created live right now?
That's right.
You are. Yep. So Roberta was up there first. Roberta, what were you working on?
That was Pendulum, book 3 of Pendulum.
Issue number 3 of Pendulum. And so now Curtis is working on.
Yep, Shadow Ghost issue 1. So
that is too cool.
Yeah. So
I've just been, kind of, I've been, focusing on the convo, but I'm also focusing on, this comic book being created in front of my eyes.
I love to watch this, and in fact, I resisted the urge to make jabber to it. Roberta, who dropped in this color in the background, she was trying to color just a little portion of it.
Oh, it happened all the time.
Yeah, like I had the wrong layer picked, and it went whoop.
It's funny because I like to work that way when I'm streaming, just because it's usually faster to put everything on a separate layer, but then I forget it's there. So I like
only once did I hear you make an exclamation like, oh.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I do that. Yeah, it's funny though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't help it. Sometimes these things happen.
So Curtis, did you go? Is this you and I talked about these balloons here?
Yeah.
Are those on a separate layer now?
Well, yeah, they are, and actually, they're actually all done. But I just took them out because I don't want to give any spoilers away about what's going on in the story. So,
I see.
So just while Roberta was doing, I was just like whiting out all the wording on a separate layer, just so nobody could see. Yeah.
I'm surprised you don't have it on its own layers.
Me too.
I do actually. I do. But
why did you white it out? Why didn't you just hide the layer?
It was just faster. It was just because actually this was like one of the earlier pages that I lettered, so I had it actually like separate folders for each panel, and so I was like, I was like, let me just do it faster, and I just slapped the layer on top and just whited it all out.
But yeah, JC, that's one of the things we do like to try to do. Is we like to try to while we're streaming to have someone doing art so that it's not just our faces up on the screen.
Right. No, that's cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and so these guys, Roberta actually kind of shoulders the lion's share of it, I will say. But they
right.
kind of Roberta does it, Curtis does it, Tommy does it. Pete hasn't done it too much since the change to StreamYard because he's having technical difficulties. But let's see here.
I had one time that StreamYard just would not let me share at all.
Yeah. I am trying to. I think this is it.
Yeah.
JC. So yeah, we try to do that. We don't ever. The writers never do that because
on a typewriter, for some reason.
I posted something on Twitter that I thought would get far more flack than it did last week. And I said on Twitter, just because you can type doesn't mean you can write.
Ooh.
Oh, that is fighting words.
I heard somebody say that to somebody once, that I knew somebody was getting their artwork done at a print shop, and they were arguing about how it came out and the print wasn't good. And the person that worked at the print shop had the nastiest insult. They said, "Sir, just because you can Google search images does not mean you're a graphic designer."
Oh,
that's awful.
That's brutal.
That's pretty funny.
So Frubat said, one artist that I read about, if someone asked them to draw Batman or Batgirl, they would stick their original character wearing the suit. So you take Shadow Ghost and stick him in a Batman outfit, right?
There you go.
So since we're kind of on that, what does the law say? And I hope I'm asking my questions in a good way. What does the law say about these mashups, right? Let's say Curtis does take Shadow Ghost and has a mashup with Batman, right? So, but it's clearly a mashup. You look at it, it's clearly not Batman, but you can see Batman elements, right? These mashups are super popular today. What does the law say about something like that?
So it can touch on multiple things. It could, if you're saying they actually have, your character plus, Batman in a comic book together, right? Well, now you are copying that character Batman, right? If you are, though, there is an exception when it comes to copyright law for parody. And so, if you are doing a parody, but it has to be clear that it's a parody. It can't be, this is basically the same character, but, his color's, I don't know, red instead of black. Right. Like it has to clearly be a parody. And so there are certain exceptions and defenses you can have if you, really, have a good conversation with your lawyer and then follow his advice. But you can learn how to navigate this and do things just like Disney had the Ugly Sonic, right, in the movie that just came out, right? They were very specific, and obviously Disney has all the lawyers, right? So they knew exactly what they needed to do in order to make this thing qualify as parody. And the law's so stringent about this. They have all of the people who worked on the film really avoid even talking about the character Ugly Sonic. At least they give, I believe it's Paramount, grounds to go after Disney with, right? And so it's a very, very, very specific thing. And so it's possible to do something along these lines, but again, you would want to speak with if you're trying to skirt the line, you're going to want to speak with the lawyer for sure. But if you're just, if you're making something that's just clearly a parody, then you're, going to have an easier time with it, more likely than not.
Is there a time limit on parody? Because, and what I mean is not necessarily time, but a lot of comics have multiple issues that comprise a story. So let's say I was going to parody Batman in a story, but it's not just a single issue. It's going to this story is going to take me 6 issues to do. Is that something that they're like, okay, well, you can get away with a parody in 1 issue, but it took you 6 issues, but it's a whole story. You know, I think you and I both talked a little bit, you know, the industry is kind of moving towards the trades now, right? Everybody wants the trades. And so what happens is you publish the issues with your site set on the trade. So you're going to publish, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 issues or whatever, and then collect those into a trade. So that would make 1 story, right? So is there a limit on, say, the number of issues?
So according to the law, a defense is a defense, right? So if the defense applies here and it applies there, then it applies in both places.
Okay.
And so, you know, as long as the defense is applicable, it is applicable.
Okay, cool. I've never heard that. What is it? What did you say? Defense of the defense?
As long as the defense applies here, then the defense is applicable. So,
okay.
You know, your defense, a defense is a defense, right?
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yes, sir.
Wow, cool. Defense of the defense. All right, Curtis, Roberta, any other questions?
I'm not sure.
I think I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of great information.
Yeah,
I know.
So because I know, JC, because I know you're a geek, right? As you walk around a convention, so MegaCon, right? You walked around the Artist Alley, you did a lot of stuff. What would you say, aside from the I'm sure the lawyer eyes going around, that's illegal, that's illegal, that's illegal, that's illegal. Aside from that, what would you then it's just speculation, of course, but in looking at and I'm specifically talking about the small press comic book publishers here, the single people who just make their comic book, and even the small press publishers, what do you, in looking at them, what do you think is maybe not their biggest challenge, but maybe the biggest mistakes that you see them making?
So I think that, well, okay, all right. There's a practical on the floor mistake that a lot of people make, and then there's the first one's easier to fix. The second one's a little harder to fix because it's kind of built into a little more. The first mistake is just tabling mistake, right? When unless you're engaged with a potential client already, when somebody walks up on the towards the table, you should engage with them. It's you know, this is tabling 101 for the most part. But you would be surprised how many people would walk by your stall who you could convert into a customer if you just engaged with them. And you know, a lot of people don't realize it's a numbers game, right? Don't get offended when somebody looks at your art and then moves on, right? Don't take it personal. It's just a numbers game. You got to play the game to win, right? And so you should really try to, in a reasonable, friendly, peaceable type of way, bring everybody to the table who you can and play the numbers game. And then after you do this a few cons, you'll realize, okay, for every X people I can get to come to for every X people who walk by, I can get Y of them to come to the table. And for every Y people who come to the table, I can get Z of them to make a purchase, right? And then once you realize those numbers, then you're like, okay, my goal is to get, Y people to come to the table, right? First off, I know I need to go to cons where at least X people will walk by my table. First off,
right?
Then I'll know when I'm at said con, I need to get Y number of people to come to my table, right? And then as long as I get the Y people to come to my table, I know I'll make about Z sales, right? And so once you do that, you're going to start to produce more of a turnkey system, right? And you'll start realizing, okay, these sort of intros work, these sort of things bring people in better, these sort of things get people's attention. When I make this compliment, it gets their attention. When I make this to do better, and blah, 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 blah. And then you start just building out a program that anybody can use, whether you're at the table, whether your assistant's at the table, or whoever other team member. They have the paper. This is what you say. This is how you do it. This is how many people you need to get, blah, 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 blah. So you should be having this many people per hour or whatever have you. And then you have a turnkey system. And so anybody who's at the table at any given time can start to produce consistent measures of success, right? And so that's one part of it. And that's the tabling aspect, right? I do tabling every now and then for the Atlas Society, and the Atlas Society is a great organization. Actually makes comics itself, and it was actually the Atlas Society that I was there at MegaCon. That's one of our comics. It's Red Pawn, and another one is Anthem that Mr. Rowland's holding in his hands. And so these are comic book adaptations of Ayn Rand's novels. And so I go to comic conventions on behalf of the Atlas Society, and disseminate these comic books. And anyway, one of the things that I did, we had a Suncoast at Suncoast Comic Con. It was a pretty um, you know some Comic Cons tend to have a lot of people. Other Comic Cons,
Partially attended.
right. And so, but we ended up still having quite a good time of it, because I was using basic tabling tactics to bring people to the table, right? And so, I was talking to some of the other creators, indie creators, who have some good content, but they weren't really, making sales, right? And and they're like, oh, usually the first day's the best day, and then it kind of peters off after that. Well, for us, right, and getting comics into people's hands and stuff, we actually had a better day on the following days than we did on the first day. But again, so anyway, coming back to it, it's just tabling is one thing. Generally, if you can, sometimes it's hard to do this depending on how everything's set up, but if you can stand beside or in front of the table, that makes it easier for you to engage with people and bring them to the table. So if you have a setup that's conducive to it, that's always awesome. Having some big, beautiful piece of art, right, that on a stand and repeat behind you helps. Do not underestimate that, because nobody knows your logo, nobody knows your name. So you can have a big, you can have a big anonymous comics behind you, but it means nothing to anybody, right? You might as well have just said blah, right? Nobody knows who you are, right?
My next banner is gonna say blah.
So it's like, but you have the big beautiful piece of artwork behind you, and that's going to draw people, because they might not know your name or the name of your characters, but people know good art when they see it, right? And they know good characters when they see it, and and different styles of art will appeal to different people, and so they'll look at the art and they'll make a judgment right off the bat as to whether or not this comic book is the type of comic book they will like based on the art. And that gets to the second thing. The second thing. So the first thing is about tabling, and then and both tabling tactics, and then also just having some sort of art that shows off what you do. And then the second thing is a little bit more on the art. Start picking art based upon the types of people you want to appeal to, right? When and I think most people kind of have an idea of this already if you're an indie creator, right? But different styles of art are going to appeal to different types of people.
Yeah.
And so if you can kind of picture who you want your audience to be, right, then that'll help you determine what type of art you need to use, and then by extension, what type of artist you need to hire, right? And so so you want to keep that in mind as you're making your books, right? And it's not necessarily a genre thing. Like there's a particular comic, I won't say the name, but there's a particular comic that's an indie comic, and it's a fantasy type story. And I like Lord of the Rings, right? I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. I like Chronicles of Narnia as well. I read the books, watched the movies. So I like fantasy, right? But I looked at the art for this fantasy comic, and I knew from the art, or I made a judgment based on the art, that this is not a type of comic that I would be interested in.
Yeah.
Right. And so even within the genre, right, the type of genre, I was looking at the art, because that tells me a little bit about what to expect when I open the book. And so, so that would be the other thing that I would encourage you. So, if you can, and sometimes it's hard to do it, because as an artist, you have your character, you have your story, and you kind of get wed to them, but you've got to know who your headliner is, which body is going to draw people to your table. Okay. If you can, you can have whoever your star runner is, the thing that attracts the eyeballs and the people, if you can have that up front, right, and people come, you can use that as a segue into other characters, right? Like, and this is kind of a silly example, but we all remember back in the day when Hannah Montana was like the biggest thing in the world. They were scalping tickets for $5,000, $10,000. Her merchandise was everywhere. Every girl, it didn't matter what ethnicity, everybody was a Hannah Montana fan. And Disney used Hannah Montana's fame in order to make the Jonas Brothers famous. And they used the Jonas Brothers in order to make Demi Lovato famous. And they were able to basically, they had their headliner, and they used their headliner to make more headliners, right? And so, sometimes you might have to take your baby and realize, okay, this is my baby. I really like this particular comic book, but what is my headliner? And if I don't have a headliner, can I come up with one and put the time, effort, and energy needed to make a good one, right? And then use that to draw people, and then I can kind of, funnel a little bit into that. So that would be what I would say is two things.
Kind of like Marvel puts Wolverine, or at least they used to. They put Wolverine in every comic, right?
Yeah, no continuity. He was in every issue every month. He was working overtime.
What's Wolverine doing in this one? Fruitbat says Silverline is going to change to become the blah blah line. Well, as I look at our clock, our time has flown by. JC, is there anything that you're like, I'm surprised you didn't ask me this? That you want to talk about, or maybe just something that you're like, here's what I want to say to you, being me and us as independent comic creators and any other independent comic creators out there, something that you're like, I want to say this and you need to hear me. It was kind of a two-pronged question, I guess.
Yeah, so I thought I'm actually a little surprised we didn't talk about like any favorite comic characters or the Trump's comics, right?
That's funny.
I actually have right here. This is my. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh yeah, the sticker.
Yeah, my Trump's.
Yeah.
Actually, but
it's a great shape, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so cool.
Very cool.
Really enjoyed those stories. I like was said earlier, I read the first one and I was like, okay, I've got to get the second one. It was just
you will be
really
happy
great.
To know. You'll be happy to know. Then JC, this is issue number 3.
All right.
It's all completely penciled and inked. Look at that, Curtis. It's all completely penciled and inked. There's that nice image from Quentin Bedwell has done all of this, right? So it is completely finished. It's not been lettered or colored yet. And this is issue number 4 by Peter Clinton. Am I upside down? No, I'm not upside down. By Peter Clinton. So
all right.
I
am looking forward to it. I am looking forward to it. Yeah, I think I was so happy when I got back to my place and I was reading through the comic, and you can tell in the first few pages, like, holy smokes, this guy knows how to tell a story.
Well, thank you.
I was just like, man, flipping the page, I'm like, good gosh, that's it's great. Like, I'll tell you, so referencing some of what I said earlier as far as my 2 points are concerned, right? So with this, the thing that drew me to your table was Trump's, right? It was like, wait, does that say what I think it says? Right. 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 While I didn't know your characters or your comic, everyone knew the name, right? And so, so that's what drew me to your table was that name, And then, and then, I ended up buying the comic book, and then, coming home, and the story was just like, whoa, right? And so, and then coming back, I think it was when I came back, I also got the cat and mouse stories as well. So I was like, okay, you know how to tell stories. So I was like, okay, what else have you written? Right. And so, and that's in the same vein of kind of what I'm talking about, right? There was one thing that drew me in. And then once I was drawn in, right, and you're able to convert me into, you're able to convert the eyeball into a purchase, right?
Yeah.
And then after that conversion took place, I liked the product. And then I broadened into other things, right? Whereas, there was nothing about the cat and mouse that drew me in. It was the name Trump's that drew me in.
Right.
Yeah. So had that not been there, I might not even be in this live right now, because we might not have ever, had the first conversation, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And so, have that hook. I really encourage every indie creator, figure out what the hook is, and the hook can be anything, right? It can be, what anything that will get people to come to your table or really focus in, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, what it is, a recognizable name, a beautiful figure, whatever it is,
right.
Figure out what that hook is, and then kind of use that, because when people come and then they figure, oh, wow, cool.
Right.
And you open the door.
And I think I told you, the creation of Trump's predates our former president, and so we debated, what's this going to do? What is this title going to do? Because of course you've read it, so clearly it has nothing to do with that. But we were like, it's going to be because of the environment that we're in. Is like you can't help but draw that, at least that question. And so ultimately we decided that whether for us, doesn't matter pro or con. It's like, if that title draws you, makes you pick it up, then that's the battle we're trying to win, right? The game we're trying to win. And so, okay, if I can get you to pick it up, then you can flip through and see that it's not about the former president. You'll either be disappointed or excited, right? But but hopefully you'll then see.
I can see someone like flipping through the pages angrily, and then they realize, and then
listen,
have a story.
It's a story.
True story. This happened at a little bitty show in a little place called Eustis, Florida. Guy approached me angry. Well, I can't believe what are you doing here? And he flipping through it. I'm like, what have I done? I didn't know what he was talking about. I can't believe you had put out a comic about that guy. And I'm like, what guy are you talking about? Right? And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. President Trump. And I'm like, oh, you're looking at the guy. No, that has nothing to do with it at all. And then he threw the comic book down and and walked off. And I'm like, well, I told you it wasn't about him. Why didn't you at least buy it? Yeah. True story, though.
So there's a law school friend of mine. He came over after the semester ended, because I'm in Florida. Our law school is in Virginia, and he was doing an internship in a different state. But anyway, after the semester ended, he came down to Florida, and he was looking at the magnet, and then I don't know, he's like, "Does that say Trump's?" And it's an eye catcher. That's just the way it is. It is an eye catching, name, right? And I think, as long as you don't have people who who act unreasonably, right, and have like some unreasonable visceral reaction to it. For most reasonable people, right, like or hate, right, they'll be more intrigued than anything. They might ask a question, they might go take a look at it, right.
I've had some snarky comments before looking at someone walk up, Trump's, so I've had some snarky comments, but that person there is the only person that's ever kind of, been sort of angry about the whole, and I never really figured out exactly what he was angry about. But you know, like I said, I've had some snark, but usually I try to react with, "Hey, you should look at it because it's not what you think it is," you know. And so yeah. So do you have a JC? Do you have a site that people can connect with you with? You want to wait till you have a till you pass the bar and have a website you can send them to? I'm asking because if you want to send people who are listening to this, if you want them to come find you, or maybe the question is, do you want them to find you yet? Where can they find you?
So on social media, I'm expect to achieve, the word expect, the number 2, and then the word achieve.
Cool.
Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. So you can find me on there. I don't post very much as of right now, but I do respond to messages across those different forms of social media. So that's where you can find me. And you can, I will be, posting the occasional update, like when I become a lawyer and everything. So
yeah, of course.
Feel free to, add me, follow me, and if you ever, have any questions or anything like that in the future, I'll be more than willing to help out. And then also, if you'd like to find out more about the Atlas Society, which is the organization that I go to these comic conventions representing, you can find them at atlassociety.org. That's atlassociety.org to get connected with them and see find out more information about the comic books that we produce at Atlas, or also find our social media and things like that.
Yeah, that's a sharp looking suit you got on in your Twitter picture there.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm going to put you on the spot now. When's your bar exam?
It's in July. Last Tuesday and Wednesday of July.
Okay. So can we ask you to come back after the bar?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can count on it then. We will ask you to come back after the bar, and then you can maybe make some suggestions and advices at that point in time that you can't quite do now, because we do not want to get you in trouble. Absolutely.
Right.
But this is absolutely something that I know just from my time being in independent comics, that so many independent comic makers just don't. They're intimidated by it. They're intimidated not just by the price, which is absolutely something that intimidates comic book people, but they're intimidated by the process. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. I don't know, what do I need? As you saw some of the questions, hey, can you get a bundle? Can you do this? Because the thing is, we know how to make comics, but we don't know how, all that legal stuff. I don't know, it's like, so yeah, we will absolutely ask you to return after you have successfully passed the bar, and we're going to be cheering for you as you. I know that you've been studying hard. Fruitbat 36 says this was great. Thanks, JC.
Thank you.
So we will absolutely do that. But we do need to call it a night, JC. After we hang on a little bit after we run the stuff. We'll chat a little bit after we're done here. Curtis, tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Sure. So 2 different websites, because my 2 different career paths. The first one is I teach Kung Fu. So my Kung Fu website is tigercrane.net. And then my comic book that's coming up from Silverline, Shadow Ghost, the Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master, is at www.theshadowghost.com. So you can find me there, and all the social medias on both sites.
Could you say that again? www.
theshadowghost.com. Yeah. Feel free to check it out.
Excellent. Roberta, tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Sure, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook under Roby Conroy. So that, and right here on Sundays.
That's right. And you can find me at Roland Man, or sometimes it's Man Roland, on all the social medias. Look for the caricature of my face. It looks just like me. We've got a Tuesday. I haven't seen a list of what where's my calendar? I haven't seen a list of what's on the slate for this week. Today's the 29th. So, yes, I do. So the Tuesday crew, I don't know what the Tuesday crew is talking about on Tuesday, but the Whammers this coming Wednesday will have Kevin Van Hook as their guest, and Kevin Van Hook is the creator of
Bloodshot.
Thank you, Bloodshot. I'm like, oh man, what Bloodshot. So he's going to be on answering all kinds of cool questions from the Whammers. And I will not be here next Sunday. Curtis will be hosting for us next Sunday. Curtis, did we ever come up with a top? What do you all talk about?
Yeah, our subject is going to be about middle-aged Eurasian males making comic books. That
Okay.
I'm just it's very specific. I'm
That's
experienced.
Roberta's like, I'm highly qualified for that.
No, it's going to be about it's going to be team ups, and so basically we're going to talk about our favorite team ups, but also idealized team ups, like who we'd like to see from different comic books come together, or different things like that.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah,
Right.
and of course it has to include some Silverline team ups with others, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I will be, as Rory mentioned earlier, I will be at Three Rivers Comic Con, my first time ever in the state of Pennsylvania, and so anybody up there who is an Ultraverse fan, a Malibu fan, dig through your back issue boxes and load those up and bring them to Three Rivers Comic Con in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I am happy to sign anything that you bring. I will also have new books there, and I'll be even happier to sign those for you should you pick those up. But here it is. I was gonna say I can't find it. It's falling off here. Let me get my banner. You guys know what way we close this off every night. We'll see you next week. Same Silverline channel, same Silverline time. But until then, remember to make mine Silverline. All right. Good night, everyone.
Hi, I'm Greg Horn. Make mine Silverline.